Hello and welcome to Finextra TV. I'm Hannah Wallace, and kindly joining us today is CEO of Bleckwen, David Christie. Hello David, it's lovely to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Lovely to be here.
So to start off then, could you introduce to our audience a little bit about yourself and what Bleckwen do?
Sure. Bleckwen is a AI-based fraud detection and prevention software provider. Our mission is to help banks protect themselves as well as their clients from financial crime. We're based in Paris, 2 years old, and we're effectively a spin-off of a cybersecurity firm that sold recently to Thales, a company called Ercom. And we decided that we were best to take this technology on its own outside of that sort of organization and go and make the world a slightly safer place.
Well, you're certainly doing something right, because back in June you took home the EBA Day Fintech Zone Prize. So can you tell us a bit about what this meant for you?
Oh, it was a phenomenal experience, and thanks to Finextra and EBA for inviting us to that event. There was 100 participants, finalists. I think there was about 16 finalists and some very high quality finalists. But fundamentally it was an endorsement of what we're trying to achieve within this industry. The financial crime landscape is changing all of the time. There's new threats that they're creating, and there's new vectors which the banking organizations are creating, like open banking as an example. And we believe that technology like artificial intelligence can help protect in this new changing landscape.
All right, well, can you tell us what APP fraud is and how AI can help to combat this?
Sure. Authorized push payment fraud is where a criminal will trick somebody into moving money from their account to the account that the criminal controls. This type of fraud typically bypasses all of the cybersecurity and defenses that banks have in place, so it's pretty hard to detect. There are two types of APP fraud. There's malicious PE, which is things like investment scams, romance scams, pension scams. They attack the vulnerable and typically consumers. You also have malicious redirection. That's CEO fraud, invoice fraud, and impersonation of officials like HMRC. And these will attack both consumers and corporates. And the event values are extremely high. APP fraud accounts for about 30% of all fraud in the UK. Last year was 354 million. And it's growing by over 50%. And it's becoming a bit of a scourge on society within the UK. 90% of this type of fraud is across the digital channel, as the criminals want to keep away from trained bank staff. But it also uses faster payments in 93% of cases, because then they can move the illicit funds very quickly before they can be stopped and recovered. From a recovery perspective, malicious PE is only reimbursed in 8% of cases. And the average event value is about £3,000 for a consumer. So it's pretty devastating on the typical household finances, because less than 10% of people can actually recover from an event of that magnitude without going into further distress. So it's a big issue for the regulators, it's a big issue for the banks and society to combat. But because it is hard to detect, we need new techniques, and that's why Bleckwen have invested in a thing called Behavioural Analytics, which is a form of artificial intelligence to identify this. And what we can do is we can learn the payment behaviors of the individual account holder, whether that be a corporate or an individual, and understand the anomalies. And we can then flag them anomalies to a fraud analyst within the bank before the payment hits the payment schemes, so that we can intervene, make sure that that was a legitimate payment, and where it's a scam, hopefully stop that money from going out and causing the damage that it does.
All right, so a little bit more about behavioural analytics and how it detects fraud, but also how does it help manage the cost of detecting fraud?
Sure. Behavioural analytics is, like I say, where we profile the individual account holder, and we look for what's called suspicious behaviour. Everybody has their own payment profile. People probably don't know it, but you buy things in similar places. You have your own profile from the amounts, the velocities, the frequencies, and all these dimensions. We can build a profile, a payment fingerprint, for want of a better term, of an individual account holder. And we can spot anomalies outside of that fingerprint and raise that using artificial intelligence. The good thing about artificial intelligence is it can do this in real time, and it can also learn. So as your payment behavior changes, we can also update the system so it updates in response to that. is the fraud analysts get involved with certain types of cases. It can also then learn from what the fraud analysts are telling it, so it improves over time. So it gets stronger and stronger over time. What this means is that you get less false positives. So from a cost of running fraud, it detects more. So in the events that we've done with some of the banks we've worked with, we've seen false positive ratios drop by 95%. That's around 20-fold in old money. And with a technique that we've got called Explainable AI, we also can reduce the time to actually manage an alert. And we've seen orders of magnitude of about 60 to 70% reduction in actual fraud loss out the door. So the total cost of ownership comes down. The accuracy goes up and the customer friction reduces. So everybody wins with this type of technology.
All right, and you've already touched on Explainable AI then. Could you tell us why do we need it and why is it so important going forward?
Sure. AI, to be effective within any major societal impact like financial services, requires strong governance. And for any effective AI system to work, you need performance and accuracy, obviously. You need adaptability because the world changes very quickly when it comes to these sort of threats. It needs auditability because we need to understand what happened in the past and to learn for the future. It needs reproducibility so that we know that we can reproduce and understand these results. And what that actually drives is a thing called explainability. And explainability in the simplest terms is the ability for a human to understand the decisions that the machine made in a human construct. And what we've done at Bleckwen is we've focused in on explainability as being a key component, because when an AI system is making a Netflix recommendation for your next movie, it's of low impact, it's low value in real terms. If it makes a mistake, it doesn't really matter. But when you go to the opposite end of the spectrum and you're talking about things that can put individuals at harm or society as a whole at harm, then you need more governance and control. And this is where things like Explainable AI come in. So for example, cancer screening, autonomous weapons, financial crime. All of these require a white box approach. And Explainable AI allows us to build transparency in the decision-making process. That builds trust. And what we're seeing is regulators getting more tuned into explainability as an ability to understand why the models made the decisions. And we can also use that to improve the models and make them even better in the future. So it's a self-reinforcing governance model, if that makes sense. So where we see explainability developing is we spend a lot of time in research. We've built it into the core product today, but we know that there's even better techniques that we can use to make it even more accurate, more easy to understand, and more extensible. And therefore, Bleckwen, we're continuing to invest in research in this area, and we'll be working with regulators as well as the financial institutions to bring this to bear and like I say, make this world a slightly safer place.
Well, Dave, you're doing some fascinating work at Bleckwen and a really worthy cause as well. Thank you so much for coming in, and again, congratulations on winning the EBA Day Fintech Prize.
And thank you for having us.